All right, for those of you joining us on the recording, welcome to week 14 government seminar. And we're going to do the screen share thing. There we go. All right, so announcements. Remember that the Unit 4 reading guide is due on Friday. That be tomorrow. Last call for that is the 9th, which is next Wednesday. I think about 3 people from Section 10 have turned it in, and I think maybe 1 person in Section 11 has turned it in so far. I mean, you still have time, but yeah, I have started putting in those check marks. I haven't put in zeros yet, but I have been putting in the check marks. They are capturing quarter grades on Monday morning, and I'm undecided if I'm going to try and have zeros put in for that or if I wait until I come in on Monday. Guess it kind of depends on if I get time over the weekend. So just to reiterate, the expectation with the reading guides is a typed digital document. I keep getting the occasional question, can I submit you pictures of my handwritten work? No. If handwriting is a part of your process, which I respect, I mean, that's individual. Some people do really well just typing stuff in. Other people, it sticks a lot better if you handwrite it out. I get it. But if that's part of your process, then you need to factor in the time that it's going to take to type your responses once you've handwritten them, however you want to do that. I would, if it were me, may keep a blank copy of the reading guide so that all you have to do is type your answers. Some people turn things in and I spent hours typing the questions and the answers. Why would you type the questions when they're in the digital document? I don't get it. And remember that needs to be turned in PDF or doc format. I eliminated rich text as an option because it was not preserving formatting. The couple things that barely anybody used it, but the couple of people that did, gosh, it made the formatting just a mess, and I didn't realize that. I thought rich text was supposed to preserve that, but I don't know, it didn't. So PDF or doc or docx format, remember you can download both of those from Google Drive if that is your preference. And I get that. I mean, using an online word processor means you never have to worry about saving, and it's there, and if you are working on a different computer, you don't have to bring a flash drive. I get that's cool. But just make sure you download that. Remember to please keep although apparently, and I need to check this, apparently the numbering scheme got wonky. So keep the formatting, please, but if the numbering's wonky, if you want to start over from 1, apparently it starts with like 51 for some reason. I made these reading guides like maybe 4 years ago, and I didn't notice when it uploaded. I'm wondering if something got kaflooey because, I don't know, I made them in Word and then uploaded them to the Google Drive format. So I have to go in and fix that at some point. But yeah, so just try and keep the numbering semi-consistent in a way that makes some semblance of sense. But do keep the formatting as best you can. And please, the biggest thing, make your responses look different than the text. Make them bold, italic, underline it, make them a different color, highlight them. That just helps me as I go through to to very quickly look at, okay, this is your answer. Okay, look at the question. Yeah, they addressed it. It helps me so much when I don't have the questions in there. It's really hard. And then if I have to go through and go, okay, there's the end of the question, here's the start of their answer. If the quicker I can look at it, the quicker I can assign you points, the better grade you get, the less frustrated I get. Mr. Bigglesworth doesn't get upset. Unit 4 test will go live on Monday. I have the review sheet ready to go. I will post that in the course later today. So if you want to hop on and start going through, I would spend some time with that review sheet. On a 4-chapter test like this, it's fairly broad. So I would spend a little time. I would not just, I'm going to take the test. I would spend a little time with that review sheet. Just make sure that, because there's a lot in the judicial unit between function of the court system and the rights stuff. It's a lot. So just make sure that you're spending some time reviewing. Also, if you are somebody that has an IEP or 504 accommodation for additional time, now, if you feel you should get additional days, guess what? That's what the grace period's for. But if you have an accommodation that says you get, say, time and a half, or something like that. I have the timer set on this thing for 90 minutes. So if you have that accommodation, either IEP 504, and you feel you're going to need more than 90 minutes, please message me, email me, call me, so I can get your name down on my list so that I can put in that test exemption. Please do that at least, let's say, 24 hours before you want to take the test. That way I can get on and put that in. With 90 minutes, I can't imagine people will need more time, but if that's you, please get with me. And I apologize that I'm having to ask folks to do that, but it used to be back in the day, Power School would give me a nice chart with everybody in a class that had accommodations, and it would list them, and it was really easy. And they don't do that anymore. Everything's in this mileposts system, that I have to go and look at each person individually to determine if they have these accommodations. And oh my gosh, it is a nightmare. So the reason it's going to take me like 24 hours basically is that I have to, once you say, okay, I have this accommodation, I have to go verify. I have to look at the thing and go, yeah, they have the accommodation. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I don't trust you. And then I have to put the exemption into Moodle. So it's a time-intensive process. It's not hard. It's just time-intensive. So please do that. The sooner the better. Like if you know now, send me an email when we're done here or after you're done watching this. That'd be great. Don't forget to do the seminar work, the week 14 CNN 10 news quiz. It's hyper easy. Nobody should get anything below a 4, really. And the week 14 seminar journal. Don't forget about the extra credit opportunity that is due January 8th, writing to elected officials. Make sure to read the PDF that I've posted about that if you are looking at taking advantage of that. Please, if you have not joined the class Remind, that's where things that you need to know immediately, that's where I put them. And so if you're not on Remind, you're missing out on reminders and announcements that need to get out ASAP. And finally, and this just came up earlier today, just a reminder, please don't use the messaging feature on Moodle. The reason, it's nice that it's there. They try. God bless them. They try. But the reason I don't like it is it does not tell me when I have a message, except that there's a little thing when I open up Moodle. But like somebody sent me something yesterday at like 3:08. Now I was on Moodle at that point. I didn't notice it until this morning. So, this person, it was a fairly urgent question, and I felt bad that it was something they were doing during a test. And it was a U.S. history kid. And I felt really bad that I was not able to get back to them, but I didn't see it because it doesn't, pop up, you have a message, blah, blah, blah. It puts a little flag right in the corner of my screen. And if I don't happen to look over there, I don't see it. It doesn't send me an email, nothing. If you have an urgent issue, do not use the Moodle Messenger. Please email me. I've listed 2 email addresses down there. You can use either one. That is fine. You can send me a text on that Google Voice number. You can call me on my office line. Although if it's after 3:30 and it's urgent, I wouldn't maybe do that. And then you can also, and this would be another reason to join the GD Remind, is you can send me private messages on Remind. It doesn't go to everybody. It goes just to me. So use one of those methods if you have an urgent issue. The Moodle Messenger, again, they try, God bless them. But it used to be that I would get an email that said, so-and-so has sent you a message, and here it is. And then I could go in and reply. It doesn't do that anymore. I've changed nothing. A couple years ago, it just changed. So yeah. Any questions on any of that? All right. So this is, I think, going to be relatively brief, but this is our topic today is something that 2 terms that people use interchangeably, and they shouldn't be used interchangeably because they are different terms, but they are confusing terms, and that is civil rights and civil liberties. You will hear, you're violating my civil liberties. I'm, so-and-so, and my civil liberties are being violated, or my civil rights are being violated, and they use them interchangeably. And they're not. They're related to each other, but they're not the same thing. So let's dive in here and take a look. So, civil liberties are freedoms guaranteed to us by the Constitution to protect us from tyranny. And here's where part of the confusion comes from, is that those civil liberties are laid out in a document that we call the Bill of Rights. I know, that is cuckoo bananas, right? Who can tell, fast and dirty definition, what is the Bill of Rights?
Isn't it the amendments?
The which amendments?
The first 10?
Yes. Ding, 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 ding. That is exactly spot on right. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Now, there are way more. On Wednesday, somebody said, it's your 10 liberties. No, there are way more than 10 listed. There are 5 in the First Amendment alone. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's 6 in the First Amendment alone. So yeah, remember, it's the first 10 amendments, and within those are a bunch of protections, things that limit government power so that government does not become too all powerful, right? So that is a list of civil liberties. So this includes the right to free speech, right to privacy, right to remain silent in a police interrogation, which is not explicitly laid out, but it's implied. Right to be free from unreasonable search, right to a fair court trial, right to marry. That's one we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Right to vote. all of those things are laid out certainly in the first 10 amendments, and then even some additional amendments lay out those freedoms and those protections, those civil liberties, basic rights and freedoms guaranteed explicitly in the Bill of Rights or Constitution, or inferred by legislation or the courts. So over the years, especially the Supreme Court has expanded upon these, because the framers were not psychic. There was no way they could have any sort of comprehension of, or any idea of, say, the internet. So the court has been left to sort of extrapolate what, if the framers were around today, what they would interpret with things like the internet and stuff like that. So yeah, it's stuff explicitly in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, but also inferred by legislation or the courts. Okay. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not like all your civil liberties, but this is kind of where we're going to jump off from. Now, civil rights. Now, they are related to civil liberties, but when we're talking about civil rights and violations of civil rights, we're talking about civil liberties being abridged to a particular person or group on account of some characteristic. Okay, so this is where, when you hear civil rights, you often think of like Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, right? And that's because civil liberties were being denied to a group of people because of the color of their skin, okay, because of their race. And so that's a civil rights issue. Legal rights that protect individuals or groups from discrimination. So civil rights is about basically leveling the playing field, right? To make sure that nobody is treated as less than certainly the majority. So that can be racial minorities, that could be gender minorities, or even, I mean, the fact is that women receive civil rights protections, even though women are actually barely, but a majority of the US population. But women do not control political agenda. Men do, and have for 200 plus years. So women are granted civil rights protections because men dominate certainly the political landscape, right? So, civil rights, basic right to be free from unequal treatment based on certain protected characteristics, which include but are not limited to race, gender, disability, in such settings as employment, education, housing, and access to public facilities. And a violation of civil rights occurs in designated situations where an individual or a group is discriminated against on the basis of a protected characteristic. So the difference between civil rights and civil liberties comes down to what right is affected and whose right is affected. Right. So, for example, let's say that you work for a company, and 3 of the 4 of you here are women. Okay. So let's say you work for a company and you apply for a promotion, and you do not get that promotion. Now, this is not yet a civil rights issue. Okay. You are not guaranteed a promotion because there are lots of factors that go into promotions. They don't happen just because. Okay. They're not guaranteed. But you're a female employee, and let's say the boss says, Caitlin, I didn't promote you because you're a woman, and I figure within 2 years you're going to be popping out babies. So I don't want to have to train somebody else. So you didn't get the job because you're a woman, which, if the employer has a lick of sense in their head, they're never going to say. But let's say they do. That is a civil rights issue. If you are denied a promotion because, and the employer says or indicates that it is because you're a woman, or because you're black, or because you're left-handed, or whatever, that then becomes a civil rights issue, because you are being deprived an opportunity in employment because of some characteristic. Or let's say you're in a wheelchair and the boss says, I didn't promote you because, the supervisor needs to be able to stand up all the time. Well, that's, yeah, there's no necessary, it's not like he has to go scale an oil rig or something like that. That, again, civil rights issue. By choosing not to promote a female worker solely because of the employee's gender, the employer has committed a civil rights violation and has engaged in unlawful employment discrimination based on sex or gender. The other example, or another example, there are certainly lots, and this one is more recent, was for a long time, if you were in a same-sex relationship, you were not permitted to marry your relationship partner. Okay, in most states said that's not okay. Some states permitted what was called civil unions in an effort to sort of semi-equalize that playing field. But what happened is that several couples sued, and actually this case began here in Great Falls, and went to the federal court here in Great Falls, and the ruling came down that the state of Montana could not deny a same-gendered couple a marriage license. That was not okay. So again, that's a civil rights issue, because you had a whole group of people that was being denied equal treatment. Now, let's say you go down to get a marriage license. You and your opposite gendered companion go to get a marriage license, and the clerk says, not issuing marriage licenses. That's not necessarily a civil rights issue if they're not issuing marriage licenses to anybody. Okay, they're not discriminating. They're just, maybe the clerk had a bad breakup and they decided they're, not going to issue a marriage license to anybody. They can't really do that. But if it's one particular group, so let's say you're white and your significant other is black, and you go to get a marriage license and the clerk says, I don't give marriage licenses to your kind, that's then a civil rights issue. So yeah, that's the difference. If it involves discrimination towards a person or group because of some sort of characteristic, that then becomes a civil rights issue. And I just found a lovely graphic organizer that sort of takes you through some of the differences. So civil rights is about equal protection, basically making sure that everybody has the same playing field, and we're not treating blonde people different than we treat everybody else. Okay, so basically elimination of discrimination, which is why there's a line through discrimination. That's what that's about. Civil liberties are about everybody's constitutional rights. So civil liberties is kind of the umbrella, and civil rights sort of falls under civil liberties in a way. And again, civil liberties are about due process, everybody being treated equally before the law in the same processes. Two cases that involve civil rights: Brown versus the Board of Education, where the Supreme Court said having schools separated by race makes those schools unequal, even if the building is the same size and they have the same number of classrooms and they get the same textbooks and yada, 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 and everything's the same. That the act of separating one race from another makes the schools inherently unequal. That's not okay. That's a civil rights issue. Regents versus Bakke, which hint, hint, is asked about in about 3 questions on the test. Race cannot be the sole factor in an admissions decision. It can be one of several factors. So this involves like college admissions and sometimes like employment. So it's not okay to award someone, say, a job or a place in a law school simply because, oh, they're Hispanic. But you can have several criteria, and one of those things that you can sort of, and this is kind of what colleges do, they put it on a numerical scale and you get points for certain things, and you can give points for being, black in the same way that you would get points for, say, having a 4.0 GPA. Okay, so that can be one of the factors, but it can't be the only. You don't just, you can't just have a situation where, oh, so and so gets the spot because they're, Eskimo or whatever. And then civil liberties cases: Gideon v. Wainwright applied the 6th and 14th Amendments to guarantee legal counsel to anyone accused of a crime. So not just, oh, we're making this right for Norwegians. Okay, everybody gets that protection. So that's a civil liberty thing. Miranda v. Arizona: everybody accused of a crime has to be informed of their rights. That's when, if you're watching Law and Order SVU and you hear them say that you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, blah, 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 blah. Those are the Miranda warnings, the Miranda rights, that when you're arrested or you're charged with a crime, the police have to basically tell you you're under arrest, here's why, and here are the rights that you have. Because up to this point, the police didn't necessarily have to do that. And unless you were a lawyer, you didn't always understand what rights you had. And again, that wasn't just, protecting Danish people. It was protecting everybody. So take away anything from this, it's civil rights is about protecting essentially the rights of some variant of minority. Okay. And civil liberties are about everybody's rights. And groups, the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was kind of the old way of saying African American, that is a group dedicated to making sure that African Americans are given equal standing with everybody else. That's a civil rights group. Whereas the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, as the name would suggest, is about assuring that everyone has the same constitutional rights, the same civil liberties. So if the government tries to limit freedom of speech, you're not allowed to talk nasty about the war, the ACLU jumps in and says, hey, wait a minute here, that's not okay according to the Constitution. All right, so that's kind of how that's different. And just, I found another lovely graphic organizer. Civil rights prevent discrimination. Civil liberties provide basic rights and freedom. Okay, that's And then the other thing that I wanted to mention in this is the 14th Amendment. Now, the 14th Amendment's a huge thing. It was passed after the Civil War, and we're not going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about Section 1 because Section 1 is pretty important. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So that was important after the Civil War to make sure that, because one of the arguments, one of the ways that the southern states were trying to deny African Americans the right to vote was saying, oh, in order to vote, you have to have been a citizen for 14 years. Well, you just became a citizen in 1865. So you haven't been a citizen for 14 years, so you're not allowed to vote. This was to say, yeah, if you're born here, you're a citizen. Okay. This establishes something called birthright citizenship, which is still controversial to this day because of the notion that people will try to cross over, specifically the Mexican border. You don't hear a lot about anchor babies from Canada, but people will try and cross over the border between Mexico and the United States, and the sort of tall tale of the women, 9 months pregnant going into labor, try to cross the border so that they can have the baby in America, so that the baby is a citizen, and then the mother would then theoretically get to stay with the baby. Because we wouldn't separate families, although if the last couple of years have shown us anything, we do. So still controversial to this day. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay, so up until this point, people were considered to be citizens of the state that they were from and the United States. All of the protections of the Bill of Rights only applied to how the federal government did business. Okay, they did not apply until the 14th Amendment to the states. The states could now, most states adopted the same kind of protections in their state constitutions, but they didn't have to. And so that you got into this gray area where you're dealing with government, but the federal government has one set of things that they can't do, but the states, if the states want to limit your freedom of speech, they were free to do that. This basically says, no, if your rights as an American then transfer to you to be rights as a citizen of Missouri or Montana or Idaho or wherever, right? Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So this is a big thing. You have equal protection, you have due process, you have birthright citizenship as a thing, and basically making sure that all of the freedoms, all of the liberties listed out in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution apply to everybody basically at all times. That's the kind of big thing there. And your book mentions the 14th Amendment a lot as, okay, this is how we get these freedoms to apply to the states, and this is how the Supreme Court has sort of interpreted that. Okay? So I wanted to bring that up so that we hit that nail on the head. All right, are there any questions about anything we discussed today? And go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask if so. All right, if there are no questions, here is your week 14 seminar journal topic. And just a reminder that on the test, one of the essay questions and the big point essay question will be about one of the things that we discuss in the seminar session, one of the seminar sessions from this unit. Okay, so There you go. And oftentimes it ties into something I asked about in the journal because I'm nice like that. So, your journal topic: what is the difference between civil liberties and civil rights? Give me a good 2 sentences about that in the journal. Okay. Are there any questions? All right. If there are no questions, I am going to allow you to be free. If you have something you need to talk to me about, hang out and we can talk about it. All right. Bye, everybody. Makes me sad. Oh, I should turn off the camera.